going to give a little bit of talk about my background because it's relevant to what I want to talk about for accelerating and advancement in women's leadership. I'm from California, and I wanted to be a professional dancer, so I moved to New York City, and I danced for 3 years professionally, and that's why I am here in New York City. And after that, I went to Barnard and got a degree in art history because I decided it was time to stop doing that. And then I did start working, and I worked in technology, and I'll tell you a little bit of stories about that. I worked at a startup bank, and then I worked at Goldman. And I was a developer at Goldman for 10 years. And then, as fate would have it, I fell in love with a guy I met in a dive bar on the Lower East Side. And his family does flying safaris in Kenya. So I went to Kenya, and I lived in a tent for 5 years and learned to fly an airplane and speak Swahili and took people on safari in the Jeep, and I had 2 kids. And we all piled back, and I went back to work at Goldman Sachs. And the point of telling you a little bit of my background is that you'll see anything is possible. So we're here and we're all technologists, and I take it that you're all technologists, but you'll see that in terms of how I think women should advance themselves and the things that you can do and my tricks that I have from mentoring hundreds and hundreds of women, is that it's all possible to do, and you don't have to come from any, you don't have to actually be technical to be in this field. I mean, so, and I'll talk about that. So there's a trait that all of us have. And we are categorically introverts, and I'm sure there are exceptions out there in the room, but those of us in technology are in fact introverts. And we like to sit in front of a computer and talk to our computer and use acronyms and words that nobody understands, like Jacoco, JBock, JSpring, Crucible, Maven, Sonar, Activate Me. And nobody knows what we're talking about except us. We have our own language, and then we fix a problem, and ta-da! My power pose. We emerge, and people love us because we did this little thing behind closed doors. And I'm here to tell, and I can't tell you how often I've been in meetings with very senior people, and I've left the room in tears, and in the bathroom crying because I couldn't get my voice. I couldn't say what I wanted to say. I didn't feel I was strong enough, powerful enough. I couldn't find what I wanted to say. I used to call the bathroom my office. Okay, so I'm past that. But so what you need to do is find a voice. So I'm going to give you 3 tips, and my first is to shout. I call it shouting, but it's find your voice. And I have a little formula for doing that. Okay, it's a formula. This is 3 years of mentoring. 1, find your voice in email. So write an email that says what you want it to say. Take that email and then talk to somebody in a one-on-one. I can talk to you and tell you, I disagree with what they said in that meeting, and it just didn't sound right to me, and this is what I really want to say. And I said it in my email, okay? Go from that to doing something I know will be very unpopular, but go into a meeting and repeat what everybody else said. I know that's not what is popular, but it really does work because you hear your voice. So if you're somebody who has something you want to say, but you're afraid to say it and afraid to speak up in a meeting, actually say, I think I heard you say blah, 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 and I agree with what you said. Or say, that's a really interesting thought. I agree with that completely. So agree with other people. Repeat what they're saying. So then you start to hear your voice. And then the next step is to actually have your own original thought in the meeting. And the last step is to go contrary to what people are saying. Say, I disagree with you. That's not right. And you can do that because you've heard your voice. And this continuum, I call it Kaizen, which is small incremental improvements. If you go from these steps and you introspect, you figure where you are on the spectrum, and find your voice and start shouting, start talking, that's very important for you to do to advance in your career. Okay. Secondly, I did work at a startup, and it was very important in terms of how I grew because there were 5 employees. One person ran the batch at night, one person mounted tapes, and 3 of us downloaded vendor packages and trained people at the bank how to how to do what they needed to do. So there were 5 of us. When one person, the guy running the batch got sick, and the guy who mounted the tapes went to get married and was gone for 4 weeks, I ran the batch and mounted the tapes. When the printer didn't work, I fixed the printer. When the general ledger needed to be run, and the person running the ledger and doing the reconciliation was gone for a week also, I ran the reconciliation and figured out how to balance the debits and the credits, and that's not what I do either. I'm an art history major after all. So it's all possible, and you have to, don't define yourself by the job you've got. Think about what your boss is doing and define yourself by what they're doing. If you work in a small company, you see the boss every day. And you go through the highs and the lows and the highs and the lows of being in a small company. And so you're there, and you put yourself in your boss's shoes. And that's what I want you to do. I want you to have a startup mentality. If you don't get an opportunity to work at a startup, have a startup mentality. You're not the job you were given is not your job. It's much broader. Okay, so that's the second. So shout, startup. And my third suggestion is to stay as technical as possible. So I have found that if you, I developed for 10 years, developer, so I have a great base. And I was very lucky that when I was in my startup bank, I had a mentor who got me into Goldman Sachs as a startup, beginning entry-level developer. And this mentor really changed my life because it got me technical. And if you're going to be in a technical field, you want to know what you're talking about. Otherwise, you won't have any credibility. But let's talk about advancement, because that's what this talk is about. Here I was a developer for 10 years, and I came back from Kenya, and I started to go into management, and I had to stay technical. And mind you, I was gone for 5 years during the internet boom, from 96 to 2001. So everything really changed. But hey, I'm curious. I ask questions all the time. When our company says they wanted to start using Hadoop, I spent hours online. I talked to everybody. I used my community. I talked to everybody and said, when would I use Hadoop and not use Hadoop? Why? What's it good for? What is it not good for? So just keep curious. And that's what I mean by staying technical. Don't ever just do, don't ever stop caring about the whys of how technology works. So I'm just about on my wrap. Those are my 3 things. So start up, stay technical, shout, communicate. And then I want to just add a little bit on, I'm calling it SAS. So I have 4 S's. Shout, start up, stay technical, and SAS. And this 4th one is really an add-on from an article that was in the New York Times a couple weeks ago. You guys, I hope, and if you haven't, please write this down. Go see TED Talk, Amy Cuddy. Okay, you guys would have hopefully read the article about power pose. All right, 2 minutes like this raises your testosterone, reduces your cortisol level, all right, and gives you confidence. And this is the Wonder Woman pose, and that's one of my favorites. Okay, real easy. And so scientifically proven. And what's really happening here is that you're channeling from the outside in. So if you channel confident and feel confident, you actually are going to start to feel more confident. People are going to treat you as if you're more confident, and you'll start to feel it on the inside. So a couple of tips in terms of your physical presence. Do not tilt your head like this. It makes you look like you're questioning. Not touch your hair. Don't even go there. The other one, and I only practice this at home without heels on, but do not sit. Don't sit. You can tell I'm a dancer. Don't sit on your foot, right? You look like a little girl, okay? So there's these things that you do physically that make you, don't do this even. This is a defensive posture, and certainly if you cave in, right? Big. So I've been practicing this, so now I sit at the desk like this. I feel better. I do feel stronger, and I realized I was doing this with my head as well. The other thing is power clothes. Okay, I put on my best one today. This is it. It speaks power to me, right? I don't want to blend in. Power jewelry, And I only wore this for you guys today. I don't usually wear this necklace with this dress, but this is my piece of power jewelry. It makes me feel like I'm standing out, okay, and I want to stand out. And it gives you, just being sassy like that, actually just gives you walking confidence, and then you can start to apply the shouting and the voice and the communication that I was talking about earlier. So I'll end on my power pose moment. Thank you.